He has been waiting 7 days for a promise that may already be gone. The words belong to no one in particular. Maybe to the wind. Maybe to the mountain. They seem to move through the white silence as Dr. Emily Carter steps out of the county rescue truck and sees the German Shepherd for the first time. He is almost invisible beneath the snow. Only the dark ridge of his back, the sharp tips of his ears, and 2 amber eyes remain above the drift beside mile marker 17. The storm has covered Pine Hollow, Montana, in nearly 3 feet of snow, turning roads into pale rivers and pine trees into bent, frozen shadows. The temperature has fallen to 9 degrees, and the wind cuts across the highway hard enough to steal breath from the lungs. Yet the dog is still there. Atlas, 6 years old, former K9, male German Shepherd, sable coat, torn left ear, no food taken in 2 days, no shelter accepted in 7. Emily knows these details because Sheriff Thomas Reed has repeated them twice on the drive up the mountain, as if facts might make the sight easier to bear. They do not. Atlas lies with his chest pressed against the snow, his front paws wrapped around something buried beneath him. Frost clings to his whiskers. His breathing is shallow but steady. Every few seconds, his eyes shift toward the tree line below the road, then return to the empty bend where the highway disappears into blowing white. "Easy boy," Emily says. Her voice is low, almost lost beneath the wind. Atlas does not growl. He does not move. That worries her more. A frightened dog may bark. An angry dog may bare its teeth. But a dog this tired has already spent most of what it has. She lowers herself carefully, one knee sinking into the snow. In her gloved hand is a syringe filled with a mild sedative, enough to calm him so the rescue team can lift him into the truck. The men behind her keep their distance. They tried ropes yesterday. Atlas slipped free. They tried food the day before. He pushed the bowl aside with his nose. They brought a heated kennel, blankets, even another retired service dog. Nothing changed. He always returned to mile marker 17. Emily studies the hollow beneath his ribs, the ice gathered between his paws, the faint trembling that moves through his shoulders. "You've made your point," she whispers. "Now let us help you." Atlas watches her. There is no panic in his face. No confusion. Only a kind of exhausted certainty. Emily has seen that look before, though never in an animal. Her husband, Daniel, wore it the morning he left for his final deployment, standing in their kitchen with one hand around a coffee mug and the other resting on the doorframe. He had looked at her as though he already knew goodbye would be too small a word. She pushes the memory away and inches closer. Atlas's nose lifts. He catches her scent, antiseptic, wool, old coffee, and the cedar soap she has used for years. His ears twitch once. Then his head lowers again. Beneath his chest, Emily sees the edge of a black leather glove. It is stiff with ice. A man's glove. Atlas has been guarding it. Sheriff Reed steps closer behind her. "Belonged to the missing Marine," he says quietly. "Staff Sergeant Caleb Bennett. Truck was found half a mile north. Driver's door open. No sign of him." Emily does not look back. And Atlas was with him? That's what the registration says. The wind rises, dragging loose snow across the road in silver ribbons. Atlas closes his eyes against it, but does not turn away. Emily reaches slowly toward his collar. A narrow chain rests against the thick fur at his throat, half hidden by ice. Something metal hangs from it. A dog tag. The moment her glove touches the chain, Atlas's eyes open. A growl rolls from deep in his chest, weak but unmistakable. The rescue men tense. Emily freezes. "All right," she murmurs. "I hear you." Atlas lifts his head with effort and places one paw over the tag. The movement is small, protective, personal. Emily looks at him, then at the snow-covered trees below the highway. "You're not guarding the road," she says. "You're guarding what happened here." Atlas's gaze shifts toward the forest. There. Again. The same direction every time. Emily slowly sets the syringe in the snow beside her, showing him her empty hand. "No needles," she says. "Not yet." The dog's growl fades. She waits, letting the silence settle between them. A minute passes. Then another. At last, Atlas allows her fingers beneath the chain. The metal is so cold it burns, even through her glove. She turns the tag over. Scratched into the back are 5 words, uneven and worn from years of use. No one gets left behind. Emily reads them once. Then again. Something tightens in her throat. Behind her, Sheriff Reed removes his hat. The mountain seems to hold still. Atlas stares at the words as if he understands every one. Then, from somewhere below the road, beyond the wall of pine and blowing snow, a sound rises through the storm. Clink. A pause. Clink. Another pause. Clink. 3 faint strikes of metal against metal. Every person on the highway stops breathing. Atlas's ears snap upright. The tiredness vanishes from his face. He pushes himself to his feet, swaying once before finding balance. His eyes lock on the forest. Emily turns toward the sound, but all she sees is white. "Did you hear that?" one of the rescuers asks. Atlas answers before anyone else can. One bark. Sharp. Certain. Then he steps away from mile marker 17 for the first time in 7 days. Atlas takes one step toward the tree line, then stops. His body trembles beneath the weight of 7 frozen nights, but his eyes burn with the old focus of a working dog who has heard something no human can yet understand. Emily reaches for him, and in the instant her hand brushes the thick fur at his shoulder, the world seems to fold backward into another winter, 3 years earlier, when Caleb Bennett first saw the same amber eyes watching him from behind a steel kennel door. The rehabilitation center sat outside Bozeman, Montana, where the mountains rose dark and quiet beyond rows of chain-link fencing. Snow had melted into thin gray rivers along the gravel paths, and the air carried the clean scent of pine mixed with disinfectant and wet fur. Caleb had arrived after sunrise in a faded pickup truck, wearing a field jacket that still held the shape of a uniform even though the insignia had been removed. He was 35 then, tall, broad through the shoulders, with close-cropped brown hair and a pale scar beneath his chin. People often noticed the scar first. Atlas noticed the hands. Caleb kept them open at his sides. No sudden movement. No reaching through the bars. No attempt to prove courage. The German shepherd stood at the back of the kennel, lean and rigid, his sable coat dark along the spine, his torn left ear angled toward every sound in the corridor. A trainer named Robert Hayes walked beside Caleb with a clipboard tucked beneath one arm. He completed 2 overseas deployments, Robert said. Explosive detection, route clearance, perimeter work. He was excellent until his handler retired early. After that, he stopped responding to anyone else. Caleb looked through the bars. Atlas looked back. What happens to him now? If he cannot be placed, he stays here. Robert paused. Maybe permanently. Caleb understood the careful tone. Permanent did not always mean safe. Sometimes it meant forgotten. Open the door, he said. Robert studied him. He does not like strangers. Neither do I. The trainer almost smiled, but the expression faded when Caleb stepped inside the kennel. Atlas did not bark. He lowered his head and watched. Caleb sat on the concrete floor several feet away, ignoring the cold seeping through his jeans. He placed a small paper cup of coffee beside his boot and rested his forearms on his knees. For 10 minutes, neither of them moved. Somewhere outside, a metal gate clanged shut. Atlas flinched. Caleb did too. Their eyes met again. "You hear things after they are gone," Caleb said quietly. "So do I." He did not know why he said it. Maybe because dogs did not ask for details. Maybe because silence felt less empty when another living thing shared it. Atlas shifted one paw forward, then stopped. Caleb remained still. That was how the first visit ended. The next afternoon, Caleb returned. Then the next. He never brought treats. He never offered commands. He sat on the same patch of concrete while Atlas kept his distance, and he spoke only when the quiet became too heavy. He talked about the ranch where he grew up, about his father Michael teaching him to repair fence posts before he was tall enough to lift the hammer properly, about Montana winters so cold the truck doors froze shut. He did not speak about the war. Not at first. On the 6th day, a late storm rolled over the mountains. Wind rattled the roof of the kennel building. Caleb had barely slept the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard sounds from another place, another darkness, and woke with his heart racing. He sat beside the kennel wall, staring at the floor, when thunder moved across the valley like distant artillery. His breathing changed. His fingers curled against his palms. The room narrowed until all he could see was concrete and shadow. Then something warm touched his wrist. Atlas had crossed the kennel without a sound. The dog stood close enough that Caleb could feel his breath. He did not lick Caleb's hand or press against him. He simply stayed. Caleb slowly opened his fingers and rested them against the fur below Atlas's neck. The shepherd did not pull away. "Good boy," Caleb whispered. The words broke on the way out. Atlas lowered himself beside him, shoulder against Caleb's knee, steady and solid while the storm passed overhead. Robert found them that way 20 minutes later. Caleb was sitting with his back against the wall. Atlas was asleep beside him for the first time in months. The adoption papers were signed before sunset. Life did not become easy after that. Healing rarely arrives like sunlight through an open door. It comes in inches. Atlas learned the creak of Caleb's floorboards, the sound of his truck, the hour the nightmares usually came. Caleb learned that Atlas disliked closed rooms and that he would not eat until he had watched every entrance. They trained without uniforms. They walked the ridges above Pine Hollow at dawn. They sat together on the porch while snow gathered on the railing. When Caleb woke in darkness, Atlas placed his head on the mattress and waited until the room became real again. One evening, Caleb knelt beside him and fastened a worn dog tag to a narrow chain around his neck. On the back, Caleb had scratched 5 words with the tip of an old pocket knife. "No one gets left behind. That goes for both of us," he said. Atlas lifted one paw and placed it on Caleb's knee. Caleb smiled, small and tired, but real. "I will not leave you." In the present, beside mile marker 17, Atlas stares into the storm as if that promise is still alive somewhere among the trees. Emily feels the old chain beneath her hand. The 3 metallic strikes do not come again, but Atlas remembers. He gathers what strength remains in his body, turns toward the forest, and begins to move. The first 10 yards into the forest cost Atlas more strength than anyone can see. Snow reaches nearly to his chest, and each step breaks through a crust of ice before sinking into powder beneath. Emily follows close behind, one hand stretched toward him without touching. Sheriff Reed signals the rescue team forward, but the narrow path between the pines forces them into a single line. The wind carries the scent of sap, cold stone, and something metallic buried under the weather. Atlas lowers his nose. For 1 second, the mountain disappears, and he is back inside Caleb's truck 4 days before the storm closed every road in Pine Hollow. The old Ford moves north beneath a sky the color of dull steel. A paper cup of coffee sits between the seats. A wooden box rests on the floorboard, tied shut with twine. Inside are Caleb's service medals, several letters from his mother, and a photograph taken when he was 9 years old, standing beside his father Michael in front of a half-built porch. Michael had called 2 nights earlier. His voice had sounded smaller than Caleb remembered. He said the doctors wanted more tests. He said it was probably nothing. Caleb knew that people often used those words when they were afraid. Atlas sits upright in the passenger seat, watching the roadside pass in long bands of white and dark green. Caleb keeps one hand on the wheel and the other near the dog's shoulder. "We should have gone sooner," he says. Atlas turns his head. "I know. You never waste time feeling guilty. That is my department." The heater breathes warm air across the cab, carrying the smell of old leather and cedar chips from a split bag in the back. Snow begins as a few soft flakes against the windshield. By the time they reach County Road 9, the flakes have become thick enough to blur the mountains. The radio warns that the storm has shifted south and may close the pass before evening. Caleb considers turning back. Then Atlas rises, ears forward. Far ahead, near mile marker 17, a dark vehicle sits at an angle below the shoulder. One red taillight glows through the snow. Caleb slows the truck and pulls over. "Stay here," he says, but Atlas is already watching the ditch. Caleb steps into the wind. The cold presses through his jacket at once. The sport utility vehicle has slid nearly 30 feet down the slope and stopped against a bank of young pines. A woman is inside, slumped against the steering wheel, and a boy in the back seat is pressing both hands to the window. Caleb hears the child calling, though the storm steals most of the words. He returns to the truck and opens the passenger door. Atlas jumps down. "Easy." Caleb crouches beside him. Below the road, a utility line hangs low across the slope, half hidden by snow. The air carries the sharp smell of leaking fuel from the stranded vehicle. Caleb studies the ground, then looks at Atlas. Every instinct tells the dog to follow. Every lesson tells him to wait for the command. Caleb removes the worn dog tag from beneath his shirt. It is not the one Atlas wears. This one bears Caleb's name, service number, and blood type. He breaks the thin connecting chain at the small clasp, threads half of it through Atlas's collar, and closes his fist around the other half. Listen to me. Atlas holds his gaze. Stay by the road. Stay where help can find you. The dog gives a quiet whine. Caleb places both hands against the sides of his neck. Snow gathers on Atlas's dark muzzle. I am going down there. I am bringing them back up. Another cry comes from the vehicle. Caleb looks toward it, then back to his partner. If I do not come back soon, you find me. Atlas shifts forward. Caleb's voice becomes firm, the old command voice shaped by years of trust. Stay. The dog sits. Caleb removes one glove and presses it beneath Atlas's paw. I will come back for that. Then he turns and moves down the slope, careful around the wire, one hand gripping a length of rope from the truck. Atlas watches him reach the vehicle. He watches Caleb open the rear door and wrap his coat around the boy. He watches the woman begin to move. The storm thickens until Caleb becomes only a dark shape among the trees. Then the shape disappears. Minutes pass. Snow settles over the glove. Atlas does not move. In the present, the dog reaches the same place where Caleb vanished from sight. He stops beneath a bent pine and lifts his head. Emily sees a strip of faded red cloth caught on a branch 6 feet ahead. Atlas steps toward it and presses his nose to the fabric. Somewhere deeper in the forest, metal strikes metal once more. The strip of red cloth trembles in the wind, no larger than a handkerchief, frozen stiff where it is caught against the pine branch. Atlas reaches it first. He presses his nose to the fabric, inhales once, then looks downhill. Emily recognizes the material as part of a child's winter scarf. The color is faded beneath the ice, but along one edge, stitched in white thread, is a small letter E. Sheriff Reed takes a careful step closer. The missing boy's name is Eli Miller, he says. Atlas turns sharply at the sound of the name. His ears rise. For a moment, the rescue team says nothing. The forest answers with the soft ticking of branches under snow. Then Atlas moves again, slower now, following a trail no human can see. His path curves between the trees and leads toward a shallow ravine where the wind has packed the snow into hard silver ridges. Emily keeps her eyes on his shoulders. Every few steps, they dip. Every few steps, he almost falls. Still, he does not stop. 7 days earlier, while Atlas waited near the highway, Caleb had reached the stranded vehicle and found Sarah Miller barely conscious behind the wheel. Her son Eli was awake in the back seat, frightened but alert, his red scarf wrapped twice around his neck. The passenger side of the vehicle was pressed against a snowbank, and the driver's door would only open a few inches. Caleb spoke through the glass first, keeping his voice calm. My name is Caleb. I am going to get you both somewhere warm. Eli nodded without taking his eyes off him. Caleb used the rear door, easing it open against the snow, then helped the boy. Crawl out. Sarah stirred when Caleb called her name. Her ankle had twisted beneath the floor mat, but she could move. The storm was growing worse, and the road above them had nearly vanished. Caleb looked toward the truck, expecting to see Atlas waiting beside mile marker 17. For a second, through the blowing snow, he did. A dark shape. Upright. Faithful. Then the mountain disappeared behind white. Caleb wrapped his coat around Eli and supported Sarah beneath one arm. He knew there was an old ranger station somewhere east of the road, less than a mile through the trees. He had seen it years earlier while hiking with his father. It was not much, only a one-room structure with a wood stove and emergency supplies, but it offered walls, and walls meant time. Can you walk? He asked Sarah. I think so. Then we moved slowly. We stay together. Eli looked up at him. What about your dog? Caleb glanced back toward the highway. He knows what to do. The words were steady, but something in his face tightened. They began through the snow. Caleb carried Eli when the drifts rose too high. Sarah leaned against him when her injured ankle weakened. The wind erased their tracks almost as soon as they made them. At one point, Eli's scarf snagged on a low branch. The boy reached for it, but Caleb stopped him. Leave it. My mom gave it to me. Caleb looked at the red cloth fluttering behind them, then at the white forest ahead. That may help someone find us. Eli did not understand, but he obeyed. By late afternoon, they reached the ranger station. The door was swollen from cold, and Caleb had to shoulder it twice before it opened. Inside, the room smelled of old timber, dust, and iron. There was a narrow cot, a rusted stove, 2 wool blankets, and a cabinet holding canned soup, matches, and a small emergency radio with a cracked antenna. Caleb worked quickly. He cleared the stovepipe, split a broken chair into kindling, and soon a weak fire began to breathe. Sarah sat on the cot with Eli pressed close beside her. The boy's lips had lost some of their color. Caleb gave him the first blanket and opened one of the soup cans. "Are you a soldier?" Eli asked. Caleb poured the soup into a metal cup. "A Marine. Is your dog a Marine too?" Caleb smiled faintly. "He would say he outranks me." The boy managed a small laugh. Outside, the storm struck the walls in long, low waves. Caleb tried the radio again and again, but only static answered. He climbed onto a chair and tapped the antenna against the ceiling beam. 3 metallic knocks echoed through the room. Atlas heard nothing that day. He was still too far away, still waiting beside the road because Caleb had told him to stay. By nightfall, the temperature inside the station had risen only a few degrees. Caleb gave Sarah the second blanket. He sat beside the stove in his shirt sleeves, watching the fire sink. "You need to rest," Sarah told him. Caleb looked toward the door. "My partner is waiting for me." Back in the present, Atlas reaches the bottom of the ravine and stops beside a tree half buried in snow. Emily kneels near the trunk. There, protected beneath the lowest branch, lies a small blue toy truck. One wheel is missing. A smear of soot darkens the roof. Atlas touches it with his nose, then looks toward the deeper woods. Sheriff Reed lifts the toy carefully. "This belonged to Eli," he says. The rescue team exchanges glances. Until now, some people in Pine Hollow had believed Caleb drove into the storm, abandoned his dog, and disappeared. The story had spread through town faster than the snow. A photograph of Atlas beside the highway had traveled across social media, followed by angry comments from strangers who knew nothing about the man he was waiting for. Now the child's scarf and toy tell a different story. Caleb Bennett did not leave Atlas behind. He went into the storm for someone else. Atlas gives a low whine and begins moving again. Ahead, beyond the trees, something dark rises beneath the snow. The corner of a roof. The dark shape beneath the snow is not the ranger station. It is only the roof of an old equipment shed, collapsed on one side and nearly swallowed by the storm. Atlas reaches it and circles once, nose working through the frozen air. Emily feels hope rise, then falter. There is no smoke, no movement, no footprints left for the eye to follow. Sheriff Reed and 2 rescuers clear the entrance with shovels while Atlas paws at a narrow gap beneath the broken door. Inside, the shed holds rusted tools, a coil of rope, and a torn canvas pack. Nothing else. Reed searches the shelves. Emily studies Atlas. The dog is not interested in the building. He keeps looking past it, toward the higher slope beyond the ravine. Then a low rumble rolls across the mountain. Snow slips from the branches in soft sheets. Reed raises one hand. Everyone back. The second rumble is deeper. Not thunder. The upper ridge has begun to shift. The team retreats beneath a stand of thick pines while powder pours down the slope in a white curtain, covering the path they have just crossed. It is not a full avalanche, but it is enough. The route forward disappears beneath several feet of fresh snow. Wind rises through the trees, and visibility drops to less than 20 yards. Reed looks at Atlas, then at the darkening sky. "We cannot keep going." Emily says nothing. Atlas tries. He pushes toward the buried trail, but his front legs buckle. She catches him beneath the chest before he falls completely. He is lighter than a German shepherd should be, all bone, wet fur, and stubborn purpose. "Not like this," she whispers. "You will not reach him if you cannot stand." Atlas turns his head toward the slope and gives a sound so quiet it is almost breath. The team carries him back toward the highway on a rescue blanket. He does not fight them. That frightens Emily more than resistance would have. By the time they reach mile marker 17, dusk has turned the storm blue. News trucks wait behind the county barricade. Their lights paint the snow in cold white squares. People have gathered near the emergency vehicles, holding thermoses and blankets, speaking in hushed voices. Some had come because they cared about the dog. Others had come because the story had already spread far beyond Pine Hollow. A missing Marine, an abandoned canine, a child and his mother unaccounted for. Strangers online had chosen their truth before the mountain gave up its own. One reporter asked Sheriff Reed whether Caleb Bennett deserted the scene. Reed stops beside the camera. Snow gathers along the brim of his hat. Staff Sergeant Bennett entered that forest to help a woman and her son. That is what we know. Then why did he leave his dog? The reporter asks. Atlas hears Caleb's name. His head lifts from the blanket. Reed looks down at him. He did not leave the dog. He gave him a post. The answer quiets the crowd, but only for a moment. Questions continue. Emily kneels beside Atlas and opens her medical bag. His temperature is dangerously low. She wraps him in heated pads, checks his paws, and offers water from her palm. He drinks twice, then turns away. When she reaches for the black leather glove still held beneath his front leg, Atlas places his paw over it. I am not taking it, she says. I promise. The word seems to settle him. A deputy approaches carrying something found near Caleb's truck. It is a dark green field jacket, stiff with ice, one sleeve torn at the cuff. Atlas sees it and rises so suddenly that the blanket slips from his back. He crosses the few feet between them, takes the jacket gently in his teeth, and carries it to the base of the mile marker. There he lays it beside the glove. Emily searches the pockets. She finds a pocket knife, a truck key, and a folded receipt from a gas station in Helena. In the inside lining, her fingers touch something small. She pulls out the missing wheel from Eli's blue toy truck. Reed stares at it. Caleb had the boy with him. Emily looks toward the forest, at least for part of the way. Atlas noses the jacket, then turns his face downhill. Reed orders a second team to prepare for a dawn search from the eastern access road. The weather is closing again, and no aircraft can reach them. For tonight, there is nothing more the rescuers can do. Atlas seems to understand before anyone says it aloud. He lowers himself beside the glove and jacket, facing the trees. Emily stays with him inside a portable shelter placed around the mile marker. Hours pass. The storm strikes the canvas walls. At 5:17 in the evening, Atlas suddenly lifts his head and stares toward the forest. Emily checks her watch. Reed had told her the dog did the same thing every day, always at this exact minute. She follows his gaze, but sees only snow. What happened at 5:17? She asks. Atlas does not blink. Far below, hidden somewhere beyond the buried ridge, 3 faint metallic knocks answer through the dark. Emily does not sleep. The portable shelter trembles each time the wind comes down from the ridge, and the small propane heater gives off more noise than warmth. Atlas lies beside mile marker 17, with Caleb's jacket beneath his chest and the black leather glove tucked against one paw. His breathing has grown slower. Not peaceful, measured, as though even rest must be rationed. Emily checks the clock again. 5:32 in the evening. The metallic knocks have stopped. Outside, Sheriff Reed speaks quietly with the second rescue team, planning a route from the eastern access road at first light. Their voices fade beneath the storm. Inside the shelter, there is only the heater, the wind, and the soft scrape of Atlas's claws when a dream moves through him. Emily opens a packet of warm chicken from her medical kit and places a small piece near his nose. Atlas does not look at it. You cannot keep doing this, she says. His amber eyes remain fixed on the canvas wall facing the forest. I know you think he is coming back. The words catch before she can stop them. She looks down at her hands. Her wedding ring is gone, but a pale line still circles her finger. Daniel had been gone 6 years, and there were nights when she still listened for his key in the front door. She had learned to call that memory. She had never learned to call it finished. My husband was a Marine, she tells Atlas. He always came home until the day he did not. Atlas turns one ear toward her. Emily leans back against a storage crate and lets the silence decide what comes next. People kept telling me to move on. They meant well. Most people do. But grief is not a road. It does not care which direction you choose. Atlas shifts his head and looks at her. The expression is tired, guarded, almost human. Emily breaks the chicken into a smaller piece and holds it in her palm. You do not have to stop loving him to stay alive. The dog watches her hand. A full minute passes. Then he lifts his nose, takes the food gently, and swallows. Emily does not smile. The moment feels too sacred for celebration. She offers another piece. Atlas eats that one too. Then he drinks several mouthfuls of water from a collapsible bowl. Strength does not return all at once, but something changes in him. His shoulders loosen. His breathing deepens. For the first time since Emily arrived, he lowers his head against her knee. She rests one hand between his ears. His fur is cold near the surface and warm beneath, where life still holds its ground. Caleb knew what he was doing when he chose you, she whispers. Atlas closes his eyes. Outside, the storm begins to weaken. The wind no longer screams through the trees. It moves in long, tired breaths, and between those breaths the mountain becomes strangely quiet. Emily hears the crackle of the radio near the entrance. Then nothing. The heater clicks off. Darkness settles inside the shelter except for a red emergency lamp hanging from the center pole. Atlas's eyes open. He lifts his head. Emily feels his body tense beneath her hand. What is it? He stands. Not quickly. Deliberately. His ears point toward the forest. At first, Emily hears only the faint hiss of snow against canvas. Then comes a sound from far below. Clink. Silence. Clink. A longer pause. Clink. 3 strikes. Clearer than before. Atlas moves toward the entrance. Emily catches the loose end of the safety line attached to his harness. Wait. He pulls once. The movement is stronger than she expects. Outside, Sheriff Reed turns toward the sound. I heard it. One of the rescuers raises a flashlight toward the trees. The beam reaches only a wall of snow. Atlas pulls again, and the line tightens. Emily kneels beside him. The slope is unstable. You cannot go alone. He looks directly into her eyes. There is no fear there. No confusion. Only command. Not one given to him now, but one remembered. Emily sees it in the set of his jaw, in the way his body points toward the dark. Somewhere beyond the ridge, someone may still be alive. Somewhere beyond the ridge, Caleb may still be waiting. Atlas turns suddenly and grips the nylon safety line in his teeth. Before Emily can stop him, he bites down and pulls. The cold stiffened strap frays once, then snaps. Sheriff Reed steps forward, but Atlas is already outside. He runs past the barricade, across the shoulder, and into the trees. His legs are weak, yet purpose carries him where strength cannot. Emily grabs her coat and medical bag. We go now. Reed looks toward the buried trail. The Eastern team is not ready. Atlas is. Another metallic knock rises from the forest. Then another. Then a third. Emily follows the dark shape moving between the pines. Behind her, flashlights ignite one by one, and the rescue team enters the mountain after him. Atlas moves through the forest like a shadow, remembering its way home. Snow breaks beneath his chest, and the cold reaches through his soaked coat, but he does not slow. Emily follows the narrow path he opens between the pines, her flashlight shaking across trunks bent beneath the storm. Sheriff Reed stays close behind her, one hand on the rescue rope, while the rest of the team spreads out in a careful line. No one speaks. The mountain has become too quiet for unnecessary words. Ahead, Atlas stops beside a fallen cedar and lowers his nose to the snow. He turns left, then right, searching. Emily hears nothing but the soft rush of her own breathing inside her scarf. Then the sound comes again. Clink. A pause. Clink. Another pause. Clink. 3 metallic strikes, weak but deliberate. Atlas lifts his head and barks once. The answer comes from farther east, beyond a ridge of white. He begins to climb. The slope rises sharply, forcing the rescuers to use their hands where the snow has hardened over buried rock. Atlas slips twice. Each time he catches himself and continues. At the top of the ridge, the trees open just enough for Emily to see a low roof beneath the drifts. The old ranger station is almost completely hidden. Only the upper half of one window and a rusted stovepipe remain visible above the snow. No smoke rises from it. Atlas rushes toward the door and begins digging. His paws strike the frozen surface again and again. Reed calls 2 rescuers forward with shovels. They clear the doorway while Emily kneels beside Atlas and checks his breathing. His heart is racing, but his eyes never leave the building. When the last wall of snow falls away, Reed grips the handle. The door does not move. Something heavy blocks it from inside. Atlas presses his nose to the crack beneath the frame and releases a low, urgent whine. Then, from within, a child's voice speaks through the wood. Mom, I hear a dog. Emily closes her eyes for one brief second. Eli, she calls. My name is Dr. Emily Carter. We are here to help you. There is silence, followed by a small sound that might be a sob or a laugh. Is Atlas with you? The boy asks. Emily looks down at the German shepherd. Yes, Atlas found you. Reed and the rescuers force the door inward. A wooden table, pushed against it to keep out the wind, scrapes across the floor. Warmth does not meet them. The inside is only slightly less cold than the forest. The fire in the stove has gone out, and the air smells of ashes, old timber, and canned soup. Sarah Miller lies on the narrow cot beneath 2 blankets. Her face is pale with exhaustion, but her eyes are open. Eli sits beside her, wearing Caleb's green field shirt over his sweater. In his hand is a metal spoon. He has been striking it against the stovepipe 3 times. Waiting. Calling. Atlas steps into the room. Eli slides from the cot before anyone can stop him and drops to his knees. The dog reaches him slowly, as though the last 7 days have finally returned to his body all at once. Eli wraps both arms around his neck. Atlas stands perfectly still. Then he presses his head against the child's shoulder. Emily turns away long enough to steady her breath. The rescue team begins working. Warm packs are placed beneath blankets. Sarah is given water in small sips. Eli keeps one hand buried in Atlas's fur while Reed checks the shelves for supplies. Everything Caleb left behind has been used with care. The food was divided into small portions. The broken furniture became firewood. Strips of cloth were tied around the window frame to stop the drafts. On the table rests a notebook with dates and short instructions written in Caleb's handwriting. Keep Eli warm. Melt snow before drinking. 3 knocks. Every hour. Sarah notices Emily reading it. He saved us, she says. Her voice is dry and weak. Caleb carried Eli most of the way. He gave us his coat, his food, everything. Emily looks toward the door. Where is he? Sarah closes her eyes. The room seems to draw inward around the question. He left the first morning. Sheriff Reed stops moving. 6 days ago? Sarah nods. The radio would not work. He said there was a better chance of finding help from the road. Her gaze falls to Atlas. But that was not the only reason. Atlas raises his head at Caleb's name. Sarah watches him with a grief that has been waiting for somewhere safe to land. Caleb kept looking toward the mountain. He said his partner was holding his position. Eli tightens his arms around Atlas. Sarah continues. I asked him to wait until the storm passed. He said Atlas would wait as long as he had been told, even if it cost him everything. Emily looks at the black leather glove still tucked beneath Atlas's harness. What did Caleb say before he left? Sarah's lips tremble. He said, my partner is waiting for me. Atlas steps away from Eli and moves to the doorway. He looks into the forest, ears forward, body still. The rescue team has found Sarah and Eli, but the dog does not lie down. He does not rest. Caleb never returned to the station. Atlas lowers his nose to the snow outside, finds a scent almost erased by 6 days of wind, and starts walking again. Atlas follows the scent east from the ranger station, moving beneath branches bowed low by ice. Emily stays close, while Sheriff Reed leaves 2 rescuers behind with Sarah and Eli and takes the rest of the team into the trees. The storm has weakened to a fine, drifting snow, and for the first time in days, a pale moon shows through the clouds. Its light turns the forest silver. Atlas does not hesitate. He passes a split boulder, crosses a narrow creek buried beneath ice, and climbs toward a stand of old pines where the wind has carved deep hollows around the trunks. Every few yards he stops, presses his nose to the ground, and listens. The trail is faint. 6 days of weather have nearly erased it. Still, something remains. A trace of cedar. From Caleb's shirt, the leather of his boots. The familiar scent Atlas has followed through darkness, rain, and fear. At the edge of a clearing, the dog freezes. A pine has fallen across the slope, its roots exposed like dark fingers against the snow. Beneath one side of the trunk, a green sleeve is visible. Atlas makes a sound Emily has never heard from him before. Not a bark, not a whine. Something lower, almost like a breath breaking. He moves forward slowly. Sheriff Reed raises one hand, and the team stops. Emily reaches Caleb first. He lies sheltered in the space beside the fallen tree, his body covered by snow except for one arm and part of his shoulder. There is no sign of struggle, no violence, only stillness. His face is calm, turned toward the direction of mile marker 17. In one gloved hand, he holds half of a metal dog tag. The other half hangs from Atlas's collar. Emily kneels and removes her hat. She does not need to say what everyone already knows. Caleb made it almost all the way back. Less than half a mile separates him from the road where Atlas waited. Atlas steps into the hollow beside him and lowers his head. He smells Caleb's coat, his sleeve, the hand holding the broken tag. Then he lies down against him as if 6 days have vanished, and this is only another night at home. Emily looks away toward the trees. Snow falls softly through the moonlight. Sheriff Reed begins searching Caleb's pockets for identification and anything that might explain his final hours. He finds a compass, a folded photograph of Caleb and his father, and a small digital recorder clipped inside the jacket. The battery light still glows faintly. Reed presses the button. Static fills the clearing. Then Caleb's voice emerges, tired but steady. This is Staff Sergeant Caleb Bennett. Sarah Miller and her son Eli are alive at the old ranger station east of County Road 9. The recording pauses. Wind moves across the microphone. Caleb breathes once before continuing. The stove is working. Supplies are limited. Follow the red scarf marker from the highway. Another pause. His voice grows softer. Atlas is holding position at mile marker 17. At the sound of his name, Atlas lifts his head. Everyone in the clearing becomes still. The recording continues. Good boy, Atlas. Stay. Keep them safe. The final words are almost lost beneath the wind. I am coming back. Then there is only static. Emily closes her eyes. The truth settles over them with the snow. Caleb did not tell Atlas to wait because he had forgotten him. He gave the command because the dog was the only marker strong enough, loyal enough, visible enough to remain at the place where help needed to begin. Atlas waited beside the highway so rescuers would know where to enter the forest. He guarded the glove. He guarded the jacket. He guarded the path that led to Sarah and Eli. Every hour, the child struck the stovepipe 3 times, and every evening at 5:17, when the wind shifted through the valley, Atlas heard the signal from the road. He was never waiting without purpose. He was finishing the mission. Sheriff Reed kneels beside the dog. He kept his promise as far as he could, he says. Atlas looks at Caleb's face, then at the 2 halves of the tag. Emily gently opens Caleb's hand and lifts the metal piece. She fits it against the half on Atlas's collar. The edges meet perfectly. One name divided by a storm. One promise carried by 2 souls. Atlas touches his nose to Caleb's hand. Then he places one paw across the Marine sleeve and remains there while the rescue team prepares to bring him home. No one tries to move the dog. Not yet. Above the clearing, the clouds open, and a thin line of dawn appears over the mountains. For 7 days, Atlas had faced the road, waiting for footsteps that never came. Now, beside Caleb beneath the pines, he finally closes his eyes. By the time the rescue team returns to Pine Hollow, the storm has finally begun to loosen its grip on the mountain. Snow still drifts across the roads, but the sky has turned a softer gray, and thin bands of morning light stretch over the rooftops. Sarah and Eli are taken to the county hospital, wrapped in warm blankets, their hands slowly regaining color. Atlas rides in the back of the rescue vehicle beside Caleb. He does not whine. He does not pace. He lies with his head resting near the folded green jacket, watching every turn of the road as though he is still guarding the man who taught him what it meant to stay. 3 days later, the town gathers at the small chapel near the edge of Pine Hollow. American flags line the walkway. Marines in dress uniforms stand beneath the bare cottonwood trees, their shoulders dusted with fresh snow. Inside, sunlight passes through narrow stained glass windows and falls across the flag-covered casket. Caleb's father, Michael Bennett, sits in the front pew. He looks older than the photograph found in Caleb's pocket. His white hair is neatly combed, his back still straight despite the cane resting beside his knee. On his lap is the wooden box Caleb had been bringing home. The medals are inside. So are the letters, the faded family photograph, and a note Michael has not yet found the strength to read again. Atlas lies in the center aisle. No leash holds him. No one needs one. His coat has been cleaned, his paws bandaged, and the 2 halves of Caleb's dog tag have been joined on the chain around his neck. Every time the chapel door opens, Atlas lifts his head. Each time, he waits for the familiar step, the measured tread of boots, the quiet voice that once called him good boy in the dark. Each time, someone else enters. Emily sits several rows behind him. Sarah and Eli sit across the aisle, both pale but healing. Eli holds the small blue truck with the missing wool pressed back into place. When the service begins, Atlas does not move. A chaplain speaks about duty, mercy, and the people who walk into storms because someone else cannot find the way out. Michael keeps one hand on the wooden box. Sarah lowers her head. Eli watches Atlas. At the end of the service, two Marines fold the flag with slow, careful precision and place it into Michael's hands. The chapel becomes so quiet that the small click of Atlas's dog tag can be heard when he rises. He walks toward the casket. No one stops him. In his mouth is the black leather glove he guarded beside mile marker 17. He places it gently on the folded flag, then rests his chin against the edge of the casket. Michael stands with difficulty and places one hand on. Atlas is back. He was coming home to me, the old man says. His voice is barely above a whisper. But he was always coming back to you. Atlas closes his eyes. Outside, the honor guard fires no salute. Michael had asked for silence. Caleb had lived through enough noise. When the chapel doors open, the congregation steps into a world changed by sunlight. Snow begins to slip from the branches in soft clumps. Water runs along the curb in shining threads. Atlas stands at the top of the steps, looking toward the road. Eli approaches slowly, the blue truck held in both hands. Mr. Bennett, he says, looking up at Michael, may I give Atlas something? Michael nods. Eli kneels and sets the toy beside the dog's front paws. Atlas sniffs it. The scent of smoke, pine, and the ranger station still clings faintly to the plastic. He looks at Eli for a long moment. The boy reaches toward him, then stops before touching his fur. You found us, Eli says. Caleb said you would. Atlas lowers his head. Eli places one small hand against the side of his neck, just beneath the joined dog tag. For a moment, the German shepherd remains perfectly still. Then he leans forward and presses his forehead against the boy's chest. Sarah covers her mouth. Michael looks away toward the mountains. Weeks pass. Atlas goes home with Michael to the old ranch outside Bozeman, the same place Caleb had been driving toward when the storm began. At first, the dog sleeps beside the front door. Every engine on the gravel road brings him to his feet. Every shadow near the porch makes his ears rise. Michael never tells him to stop waiting. He understands that some habits are made of love. Sarah and Eli visit every Sunday. Eli brings books, toy trucks, and pieces of chicken he pretends not to drop beneath the kitchen table. Slowly, Atlas begins to follow him through the house. One afternoon, as winter gives way to spring, a pickup truck turns onto the road. Atlas lifts his head from the porch. His body grows still. For several seconds, he watches the vehicle approach. Then Eli calls from the yard. Atlas looks toward the road once more. The truck is not Caleb's. The footsteps are not his. The promise will not return in the way Atlas once believed. But beside the fence stands a boy who is alive because Caleb kept walking into the snow, and because Atlas stayed when every part of him wanted to follow. Eli opens his arms. Come on, Atlas. The dog rises. The joined dog tag catches the afternoon light. Atlas leaves the porch, crosses the yard, and lies down beside the boy beneath a cottonwood tree. He has not forgotten. He never will. But for the first time, when a vehicle passes beyond the gate, Atlas does not look back.